And that's dependent on your belief that human existence in some sense is good, and that it's striving towards some sort of higher unified order. And you might think, well, you don't need all that to perceive the glass. And the answer is, yeah, as a matter of fact, you need all of that to perceive the glass.
What Peterson claims here is dubious in a number of ways, right?
Yeah,
and
that's
no reason. It could go out to different, multiple things.
Yeah, how can you really prove? And I think he knows statistically his audience. I think he knows he is pandering to a mostly Christian audience in America. All right, welcome back to MythVision Podcast. We are MythVision. That's right. I've got Nathan from Digital Gnosis. For those who don't know, go subscribe to his YouTube channel. Let me do you a favor here and pop this in the chat for everybody tuning in. Last night, let me inform you what happened last night. Last night I had a dream. No. Last night I was, getting decompressed from the day, from the week of recording courses with Richard Carrier. And man, I was exhausted. And I was scrolling through YouTube. I got this recommended video, and this recommended video was about Jordan Peterson. Now, I've seen hit or miss. I usually avoid the politics stuff, especially from him. But it's like hit or miss, right? Once in a while, you see something he says, you see, holy shit, Mohammed Hijab is interviewing Jordan Peterson. Yeah. What's this about? Or you see something like that, and you're like, what is this about? And of course, get ready for like gymnastics language and philosophy lingo and stuff.
Sorry to interrupt, but I don't know if you ever saw the Dawkins interview as well, when Richard Dawkins raised with Jordan, like, so there's this clip of you, Jordan, giving a lecture where you talk about taking psychedelics and seeing DNA, and right. Surely you can't be serious. And then Jordan just like goes full mask off and is like, yes, seriously, when people take psychedelics, they can see into DNA. This is what the ancients saw. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
For example, even being able to do something as simple as looking at this glass, simply seeing a cup, requires the assumption of value judgments. And there are two reasons for this. The first is expressed here by Jonathan Pageau, who appears to have had a huge impact on Peterson's thinking.
We can't perceive an is without a hierarchy.
This is one of those yes men you were talking about, right?
Yeah. So this idea actually comes from John Vervaeke. So John Vervaeke is a cognitive scientist, assistant professor at University of Toronto. I emphasize that not to be a douchebag, but just because sometimes people in that circle inaccurately claim that he's like the head of the department of psychology to sort of like, build up his profile or something. And so he's got this thing he calls relevance realization, which I'm a little bit dubious of, because it borrows some terms from computer science, and there's a lot of metaphor involved. I'm not quite sure how tightly the like analogy actually holds. Mm-hmm. But anyway, he uses this thing, and the idea is it's to do with how you pick out like salient features of the world, and it's meant to be like this problem of general AI, right? So if you're engineering a system, how do you pick out general features of the world? And the idea is that, well, humans have this problem as a system because we pick out features of the world as well.
Listen to him describe it, right? Like he's trying to say value judgments, and how do we look at a cup? It's got many details to it, but we still just call it a cup. We've grouped it into all of these different details that we can get lost in, and many artists do. They'll spend months in the details, the intricate details and stuff with their OCD and whatnot on certain things, and that's needed for some people. But like most people just categorize something a cup. I don't want to get lost in that because 99% of people go to sleep on that kind of question. Fine. It's irrelevant to the point I'm trying to bring up today, I think, even though it's very significant if you really want to do a deep dive and to follow Nathan. Nathan, you're like I like to call you a philosophy guru nut, okay? Like, you really are, man. And it's good to have a guy like you around who can go, cut the BS. This is what they're trying to say, because there's a lot of language that this stuff hides behind.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. We're going to see what he says here.
And because you can drink it, and because you need to drink water to survive, and you are willing to drink water to survive because you believe emotionally and motivationally and perhaps rationally that survival is a good, and that's dependent on your belief that human existence in some sense is a good, and that it's striving towards some sort of higher unified order. And you might think, well, you don't need all that to perceive the glass. And the answer is, yeah, as a matter of fact, you need all of that to perceive the glass.
I do want to raise, though, at this point, I think what Peterson claims here is dubious in a number of ways, right? Because this like chain of value judgments that he likes to talk about, and he has talked about this for years. you can bottom that out in a lot of ways. Like you could actually just bottom that out as like someone caring about drinking. You don't need to add in this extra thing, right? About like because if you just had that, it's going to stop somewhere, and that could be your ultimate thing. And obviously, you could call that God if you wanted to, and we can. But you could also have lots of different stopping points. So Peterson paints this picture as if the only way that the values can kind of like map out is going up this hierarchy to one thing.
Yeah,
and that's
how
it could go out to different multiple things.
Yeah, how
like,
can you really prove? Yeah, so this is an interesting point, and this actually connects to his idea about divine or God and things like that. And we're going to get into that. That's why I thought this is a great way Connor builds up to the point of where we're going with this, and where I think he's being deceptive. And I know that doesn't mean that I don't think he believes the bullshit. I'm saying I honestly think he believes it, but I also know that he knows people are hearing him. And I think he knows statistically his audience. I think he knows he is pandering to a mostly Christian audience in America. And they need to hear him not say, historically, no. Meta,
but I don't think he's thinking about it, though, quite in the way that you think of that. I think he's captured by the audience such that, like, when he said certain things, he's got like these positive rewards from doing it, like lots of likes on Twitter, the things go up on YouTube or whatever, and so I think he's not like thinking, how can I manipulate these people? It's that doing that stuff is what gives him the most like pleasure, because of the way that the feedback loops of all like how his audience
maybe it could be both. I think it's both. I can't say that. I honestly want to challenge you on this, because here's my opinion. I really do. And you and me can disagree on this at the end of the day. It doesn't really matter. But why I think this is, when you have someone, a fundamentalist, a radical fundamentalist Muslim, like Muhammad Hijab, he's asking very pointed questions. Like he is saying the Trinity is illogical. It doesn't make sense, right? Which me and him, we are apples to oranges. Okay. Like we do not agree in so many ways, but there's questions he's asking in that interview where like Jordan could have gave it an easy answer, but instead he goes, what do you mean by do? And what do you mean by mean? And what do you mean by God? And bro, you are obfuscating the question on purpose to manipulate and control where you want your answer to go. That's what I mean by deceptive.
So I think that is happening, right? But I don't think that Peterson is like, that's the thing, is that from my point of view, because Peterson isn't thinking, oh yeah, like I actually think this, but here's what I'll do to be manipulative. I think it's like self-justification and rational. It's like, if you're trying to stop smoking or something, right? And then maybe you have one, and then you go, well, why did I do that? And then rather than going, oh, it was like weakness of will or something, maybe you go, well, I've been good to myself, and I've got, and you become genuinely convinced of like the justifications you come up with.
Right.
I think it's I think it's like that. Like he's like, yeah, this is deep and profound, and there are important questions about what do means and what means. And
but this is kind of an apologist thing, because if you take a Muslim who, let's just take flat earth cosmology and import it into the Middle East in the 7th century and recognize that the Quran speaks with cosmology that is dated, okay? But you talk to a modern Muslim and they're trained to manipulate the worldview and the text and things in order to pander to people in a 21st century. You might go, are they lying? Well, they may believe simultaneously they know they need to make the Quran not sound like a 7th century dated cosmology. They need it to be, God knows, future science. In fact, there's going to be science we're going to discover in 1,000 years from now where God's going to know exactly, and the Quran is going to vindicate it or whatnot. So I think there's an apologetic built into his whole thing. And it sounds very dishonest. That's what I'm trying to get at.